4 tenets: love of oneself, love of what you do, love of who you do it with, and love of who you do it for. But the first one, love of yourself. It is surprising how many people don't actually love themselves. And I don't mean that to sound weird, but that is the ability to look at yourself and go, yeah, I've done an honest day's work for an honest day's pay.
Welcome to the Bountifull Podcast, where we explore what it means to live a bountiful life. I guess we're here today to have an exploration of joy and to learn more about creativity and its role in fostering a bountiful life, but also healthy and thriving communities. I'm delighted to be here today in the studio with the one and only Richard Taylor, founder, creative director and CEO of Weta Workshop, Academy Award winner, creative genius and I guess New Zealand icon. Richard, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast.
Thank you, Sian, and hello everyone. It's Richard here, and it's lovely to be talking on this most wonderful of podcasts.
So it's a privilege to have this time with you today, especially surrounded by the vibrant artistic atmosphere in Wellington. For those of you listening or watching, I have to share that obviously we're in Richard's office, surrounded by collectibles and what I've affectionately labelled as treasures, your treasures. It's amazing. I guess, what do you see every day when you're in here?
Yeah, well, the reason that this room is so dense with treasures is I am adamant that if you wish to draw from the wellspring of creativity, you have to surround yourself with incredible and inspiring things. And every sculpture bar one in this room has been done by other artists. There's almost no sculptures in this room that have been done by people from Weta Workshop. They're actually collectibles that I have purchased. They're called garage kits mainly, and you purchase them, you glue them together, and then you paint them. And it's a way that someone in my earning capacity can have really beautiful sculpture around me, and I have a great passion for sculpture, specifically figurative sculpture, and hence why these gorgeous objects adorn the walls. Some may not find that so gorgeous, but if you look at it, if you're not interested in the subject matter, just look at it with respect to the extraordinary sculptural capability that's been put into it. And that inspires me every day.
I love that. So before we get into things, very important, do you have a vegetable garden?
We have 2 vegetable gardens. We have one in town that we've been growing for we've lived in the same house for 35 years. We bought it on Meet the Feebles. It's got a garden, grass garden smaller than this office, and in the corner of it is veggie patch. And every year my wife plants it out. And because of the wind on the top of Hataitai Hill, it's tortured vegetables. So they are never as lush. But in the last 10 years, we've been growing a garden in the Wairarapa, and we've got a huge veggie patch, and we can eat multiple meals out of that. But we also have peas growing up the windows inside our house, and there's nothing more lovely than sitting there in the morning plucking peas off the vines and chewing on them. So yeah, we're big into our veggies.
You know your miniature railway, do you have like veggies growing in amongst your railway?
We drive right past the veggie patch, but more cool than that, we have planted a forest of fruit trees, and you can pluck pears from the back of the train. So when they're sun-kissed and they're warm, and that's actually a heritage pear tree. I specifically made the track pass under the boughs of the pear tree, and you reach up and you pluck pears. We had the most senior woman in the Dubai government come and visit us, and I remember her finding such a sense of joy in the fact that she could actually take fruit off trees, because of course where she's living in the Middle East, it's not as abundant in those type of trees. So it was so lovely seeing someone so senior and so amazing finding so much joy in this very simple action. Yeah.
And then do you love to cook as well?
I am an okay cook. I am an efficient cook. We used to share cooking 50-50, but not so much anymore because I get home late.
Right.
But I do actually enjoy cooking. Tanya would question that because I have a relatively minimal repertoire of meals, but I've done some pretty neat ones lately. Thai prawn curry is something I tried recently, and man, The first time I tried it about 6 weeks ago, I didn't nail it. I over-mushed the onions by cooking them too much, but next time I cracked it. I actually followed a recipe online the second time because I tend to be a bung cooker. My mum was a bung cooker, but she always used to create extraordinary meals, and I've sort of followed that and not as good. So this time I followed a recipe, and I even got compliments from my daughter, so that was good.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So we're obviously here to talk about what it means to have a bountiful life. I would say you've had a bountiful life and you're still going. But can you tell me how you see the world?
I see the world through rose-coloured spectacles, definitely. We've had our teeth kicked in from time to time, as everyone in business does. And, life losses and, loved ones passing and so on. People that are very close to us at work that are young have passed due to illness. And that is very, very sad. But I like to try and wash those away with the positivity of life. It's amazing here because we've got 380 people on average. And that means that someone almost monthly will lose a parent or a relative. But within a month of that happening, a child is born to someone at work. We've had over 100 children born to people at work here. And the cycle of life, cliche, I know, but the cycle of life. And you go, well, one thing has replaced the other, right? I've been asked often, how do you judge your success? And it must be Oscars won or red carpets trod or whatever. And I don't see it like that. I actually said at the awards the other night, we measure our success by number of mortgages owned by our staff and number of babies born to people that work here. And that sounds a bit mushy, but if you think about it, that's exactly what all companies should be aspiring to, because that means that you've brought a level of confident certainty. We're a middle-class workforce, right? We're a blue-collar middle-class workforce for the most part. Where people think of us as a film company, we're a manufacturing company primarily. To find the stability and certainty in an industry that otherwise is incredibly uncertain, that you can purchase a home, get a mortgage basically, and start a family, I see as a very important part of the sign that we're trying to do something right. So I try and see the positivity in everything. It's very hard when you see situations such as happening around the world at the moment, and the issues that continue to happen. But you've got to bounce back from it and look after your own team and do what you can at a charity level whenever you can. So
I love that. How do you see yourself?
Fat, well beyond middle age, tired, and still the child that I always was, right? I am living in an older man's body with the fertile mind of a young enthusiast, which is incongruous. I wish I had a fitter, more dynamic body, but there's young people that work with me here that say that they can't believe that how they can even keep up, because I still have an intense level of energy, but I can really feel that my mind is racing off at 1,000 miles an hour on 1,000 things, and I just wish that I had the years left and the energy to drive forward at that very intense level. So I see myself as an eternal optimist. I try and I believe that my passive nature has been one of my superpowers. Some may argue that you therefore are a pushover in some cases, but I reflect on my full quantum of life so far, and the times where I could have been more bullish and more aggressive and more belligerent, let's say, in a self-protectionism way, I've chosen not to be. And on reflection, today, looking at myself very honestly, I'm very pleased that I have remained passive in my approach to life and my approach to the sometimes aggressive nature of things that we deal with. And because it's allowed me to navigate through it and end my day the same person I started my day. And if I am trying to pay myself credit, I would argue that proudly I'm pretty much the same person that started at 17 years old and managed to stay strongly to my scruples and my moral compass.
I did want to ask you about that, and I think it's a bit of a weird question, but you strike me as someone that has just always been like abundantly you. But I think in a world where a lot of people don't actually know who they are, or they're shaped by, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff, but you kind of just seem like you've always marched to the beat of your own drum. And I kind of wondered if you had any words of advice or wisdom of like just actually being like, yeah, I am me. Like, I like doing these things and that's how I am.
We are in a service providing role for about half of our business. We have a B2B, business to business side of our company, and that employs 250 people. And then everyone else is in a B2C role, right? But in a B2B role, you are in a service provider's role. That doesn't mean you have to kowtow, but you certainly are beholden to the wishes of someone else. And therefore, it could be argued that it is the opposing of what you've just said, that how can you be your own person because you're constantly having to service other people's needs. But I like to think that while servicing other people's needs, we can play to our own drum. And I actually think that our clients, once they learn that of us, of me and of us, actually like it. Should they have in previous relationships enjoyed keeping people under the thumb and finding that people were kowtowing to them, I think most of our clients actually enjoy the fact that we have strong opinion and willing to share notes and be never confrontational, but be provocative around the journey. You know, ultimately, your greatest aspiration is to launch your children into the world with the tools that equip them to do what they desire to do and what you hope they can do. So when I look at the imprint that Tanya and I have made on our children and the people that they are growing up to be, and you reflect that on the mirror that is yourself, that's the best litmus test, I guess. But I talked earlier before the interview started about the tenets. They're very simple and very obvious maybe, but it does play to the question you've just asked. 4 tenets: love of oneself, love of what you do, love of who you do it with, and love of who you do it for. Now, those tenets can be played across your professional life, your academic life, your sporting life, your personal life. But the first one, love of yourself. It is surprising how many people don't actually love themselves. And I don't mean that to sound weird, but that is the ability to look at yourself and go, yeah, I've done an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I've carried myself in a manner that I have no qualms about. I've tried to do good by people around me, treat others in the manner that you wish to treat yourself. All of these things add up to going, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with myself. And then, of course, finding something that you love. Now, some would argue that's a privilege. I actually think it's something that you have to work at. You know, my parents naturally presumed that I would go into an academic field like both of they were. My dad's an aircraft engineer and my mum was a science teacher. And at one point, it was considered I might be an orthodontist because I had technical skills and I had braces for many years. But I just had this intense conviction of what I wanted to do. And we've built the career that we wanted to do. I've been offered some pretty amazing opportunities to do other things that would be financially rewarding and arguably prestigious, and I've turned them down because it would mean that I couldn't be doing this. And then, of course, if you don't love the people you work with, stop working with them, or try and find a way to love them, and then love of the people you do it for. If you don't love the fans, if you don't love your audience, if you don't love the client that you're working for, then it's probably going to be a fairly shallow, hollow, let's say, a hollow experience. So that's really as simple as I see the world. Yeah.
It kind of leads nicely into and I guess it's an extension, but what does it mean to you to live a bountiful life? Is it the tenets?
I've never thought of my life with that term, bountiful, but I can see why you've brought the word into the conversation, and I reflect in this moment on why you may wish to interview me regarding a podcast on bountiful life. You are what you make, right? You are what you create. The busier you are, the busier you are. The more you do, the more people ask you to do. So you open yourself up for a bountiful life, and you engineer a bountiful life around you if you want a bountiful life. I could very easily choose not to have a bountiful life. So what does that mean? And by no means am I using the metaphor or what I'm about to explain as being in any way derogatory to video game playing, because I have people working with me. In fact, one of our most senior creatives only played video games for his whole youth, and yet he's the most skilled, the most talented, the highest paid, the best at what he does. And he would argue that playing video games was every bit as good as any training he could have got reading books or doing academia for the career that he wanted, right? But when I was working on Halo, the Bungie company very kindly gave me an Xbox, and they gave me a copy of the Halo game. And I put it in excitedly, and I played it for an hour, and it was amazing, every bit as amazing as you would expect. And I got stuck in a corner with Master Chief and had to ring the very person I was talking about just before to get me out of the corner because I couldn't figure out how to do it myself. And that was fun. And then after an hour, I sat back and I went, oh, this is going to suck me in, because I'm highly, I get very easily caught up in things. And I was like I can't make one collectible. I've got to make 250 collectibles. There's no middle ground.
Or a whole world.
Or a whole world, yeah. So I'm like, oh boy, video games. Nope, mustn't go down that rabbit hole. So I packed it up, put it under the bed, and it sits there to this day. And because I could see that it would remove time that would feed the bountifulness of the things I really wanted to do. And that's something I have to be very thoughtful of.
Putting your time where you want it to be.
Yeah, being focused on, I have a near pathological need to fill any moment with something. I'm never satisfied with just doing one thing and then taking a rest. I've got to make sure that if I've got a rest coming up, I've got a project to fill it with. And, that's good fun. Luckily, my wife, Tanya, is the same mindset. So we've built a sculpture park in the Wairarapa, and that has been built by us in the weekends where we really should be resting from the 70 plus hours that we're doing here every week. But we want to fill the weekend with a creative process.
Is that something to do, how people say that thing, like if you find what you love, you won't work a single day in your life? Is that kind of that for you?
Yeah, people come up to me and go, oh, how could you have worked so hard across the weekend? You must be knackered. And the answer, yeah, I am really knackered, but not mentally, right? My muscles are sore, and I am probably would do with a bit of a sleep, but mentally, I'm incredibly stimulated and desiring to get back to the workshop on Monday morning to bring that stimulation to my work. Yeah.
In my household, we call it being delightfully pooped, where you
Yeah, that's
where
great.
you just kind of sit down and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that was a lot, but I'm excited to go to sleep and wake up and do it all again.
Yeah. Delightfully pooped is exactly it. Yeah.
What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Follow your passion. Well, this isn't advice. I would repeat to my 25-year-old self, stay true to your passions, remain kind to as many people as you can possibly be in your life, because that not that you do it to pay dividends, that's the wrong motivation to do it. But if you do that, it pays dividends because people invariably are kind back to you. And our business is a business of, it wouldn't operate if there wasn't kindness between people, because you lock arm in arm collaboratively moving forward as a wall of effort. It's not individual pursuits. And you can't lock arms with people that don't want to be kind to you because you haven't been to them. So that's an important part of it. Spend more time with my parents because they grow old quick and pass, and maybe start a family earlier so you're not as pooped by the time the kids are in their 20s and you're now in your late 50s.
Yeah.
When I reflect on my journey through my career, I am satisfied with what we've done. I'd like to have done more, but I know that the physiology of who I am probably couldn't have coped with more, even though my dreams are greater and want to do more.
You still got some life to live too.
I've got lots of projects that I want to do, major projects I'm still aspiring to do, while continuing, to do the projects that come to us every year. Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit around what sparked your interest in the creative worlds or in some of those, like in the art and creative pursuits?
Yeah, there's so many things. I think it's hard to sort of clasp on any one thing. There's a number of things I think that influence us all into our chosen pursuit in a career. Why are you doing a podcast? You could have easily have been doing X, Y, and Z. Television shows, quite simply. TV shows, Thunderbirds specifically, aspiring to be like the people that were making the show that I loved. The incredible excitement around meeting certain people that had inspiration to me. We had an elderly Scottish friend who made interesting things in his woodworking shop. That inspired me. My dad built all of our furniture. He built our car. He built our boat. We eventually built our house together. Even though I didn't acknowledge it at the time, because it was a frustration and a distraction from what I wanted to be doing, such as studying and getting through my schooling with less friction. I see that as a major part of the influence in my life, specifically building that house that we built for 5 years, Mum, Dad and I, over a period of time. But also, very specifically, I bought a dog-eared print of The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch in before my teens, and I hung that above my bed. And that was really the first appreciation that running in parallel with my own reality, there could be imagined realities. In that case, it's a religious reality, but to me, it was just a imagined reality. And in this case of that painting, there are three realities, which is our real life, a blessed spiritual life, and the life of purgatory. And I also bought a book that had an amazing collection of sculptures in it. I didn't know who they were by, I didn't know the world that they were from, and we haven't got time to explain the continuation of that story, but that story has had the most blessed outcome from that book. And, reading The Hobbit, getting inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, a social studies teacher that became my art teacher, on and on and on it rolls, right? There's so many things. Growing up in the countryside, I've said in the past, when you can't nip down to the corner store and buy it blister packed, ready for fun, You have to invent it with your mind and your hands. So from the earliest age, I always had things in my mind that weren't accessible to me because you couldn't buy them, and mum and dad couldn't afford them, or they weren't available in New Zealand or whatever. So you had to make them. So I started digging the clay in a creek on the farm and sculpting so I could sculpt the very creatures I wanted around me, etc., etc. So
I think for me, I lived on a farm as well, and we were ages from town. And so my fun was marbles, collecting cicadas and climbing trees. And I remember quite distinctly when mum and dad bought me the Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton, and we had all of these humongous trees. And I think that for me was one of the first instances where like the concept of world building and being transported, obviously me going up into the tree and the clouds wasn't going to transport me anywhere, but through that book, it kind of unlocked the whole like fantasy, fiction, like taking your brain in places, being imaginative.
I grew up on Enid Blyton as well. In fact, we introduced our children to Enid Blyton. I've probably listened to the Faraway Tree spoken, the red book, more times than almost any other book. Amazing. I could actually, I had actually memorised large chunks of it a few years back when my daughter was younger. Yeah, Kate Winslet was the person that did the recorded book.
Great job.
And it is so good.
I have first edition of the illustrated versions, so maybe I have to send them to you and you can have a look at them.
Well, maybe drop them off sometime and I'll have a look with my family. Yeah.
So to me, like looking at some of the creative projects that you've done, the things you talk about, is your mind a labyrinth of corridors where behind each door is like a giant bug or a magical land or an orc army? Like, what does it look like for you?
I enjoy those moments where I can grab a breath, specifically the end of the night when I've finished my emailing and I've closed my computer and I can sit there and go inside my head for a while. And you split it between philosophizing about life and thoughts and people and ideas and imagination of what you aspire to do and see and what could be, and projects that you've engaged with and what you'd like to do on it and so on. And I call it tumbling. The trick for me is to trip through the first door and not ploddishly walk and not sprint and not sneak. It's to tumble so that your process of imagination gathering has a certain level of randomness to it, caused by the fact that the action of tumbling, as you might tumble down a hill, you tend to bounce around a bit and knock against things, and happy accidents send you down another train of thought. The most beautiful thing here, and we do it at this very table with that very whiteboard, hence the drawings on the whiteboard at the moment, is that we get half a dozen of us together that think like in the same tumbling manner. And oh my gosh, it's joyful for me beyond almost anything else in my life. Because if I think I've come up with something original, you drop it onto the table and it catalyzes someone else that thinks completely beyond where you thought you were at. And then that catalyzes you. And obviously it's called brainstorming or spitballing, but we just let it tumble onto the table, and we got to capture it. We always have a production person with us that is writing furiously so that we can pluck the worthwhile elements out of it. I'm a very big believer that you do not start a project. If we've been asked to come up with the core creative, you do not start it until you have the grand idea. So on Gallipoli, my colleague Rick and I, sitting across the way there, had the grand idea within an hour. And that meant we could literally start 2 hours in. But Bug Lab, which we did for Te Papa as well, 2 months in, of a 5 months deadline, we still didn't have the grand idea. So we hadn't started a stick of work. And it's very conscious that you're running out of time. And if you're running out of time, then you're paying overtime to get the same body of work done. So it costs you. But without that grand idea, it's very, very hard to have the conviction that you are on the right track. And there's nothing worse than building things that you never use because you don't conceptualize it. Yeah.
Can you talk about how you come up with these things? Like, how do you just come up with a gigantic bug beyond that, or is it just that idea?
If we are coming up with something entirely of our own, let's say the Weta Workshop Unleashed experience in Auckland. So you've got a completely blank canvas, which is the building, the floor, layout of the floor of the building that Sky City has told us we can occupy. And we've got the aspirations to do a location-based experience in New Zealand, now in Auckland. That's it, right? And what you have to do in a year is conjure up the grand idea and then facilitate the level of imagination and thinking that plots out every possible journey of every visitor to a fulfilling level. Hopefully we've done that. Some may argue we haven't, but the intention is certainly to do that. I don't think anyone wakes up on Monday morning intending to do a bad job. Like, I think almost every human on the planet sets out to do a really good job. Whether they do or not is questionable. But so we set out to do a really, really good job and try and excel. We never pursue perfection. Perfection is a fallacy, right? Because we're working within a commercial environment. If you're a fine artist, you could arguably pursue perfection. But in a commercial environment, even when we're doing something of our own, we're still trying to meet a budget, meet a deadline. And we're very strict on ourselves around not breaking deadlines and not going over budgets on things. So we try and pursue a high level of excellence while thinking outside the box, making sure no one wants to see tomorrow what they saw yesterday. So you're trying to always come up with original and new things. Very, very hard in a world where every day there's millions of original new things being created by an ever-increasing and educated population. So, yeah, good fun.
How have you nurtured your mind and soul over the years?
I read a great deal. I don't read a lot of fiction. I did as a teenager and my early 20s, but then I got fascinated in biographies and technical writing. And when I arrive home and have dinner or make dinner, socialise with my family, and then before I open my computer, I will reach up and take a book off the bookshelf next to me, flick through it at the least, read a chapter at the best about some artist's life, someone's creative journey, and I find that incredibly informative and inspiring to my mind. I have an insatiable interest in looking at things. I drive my assistant crazy when we're traveling together because she's trying to get me somewhere for a very stringent deadline. But if I see something that I may never see again, and it could be as simple as a crushed piece of MDF board in the middle of a road that a truck has driven over 20 times, creating I've literally got examples of this on my phone, that's created a patch of texture that I may be able to bring back up in a meeting later on. Also, just talking to people, being inspired by people. There's two types of people in the world. There's those that look at the world and those that observe the world. Artists observe the world, and you just want to have this insatiable fascination, like just talking to you right now. I'm talking to you, of course, but I'm also looking at the composition of your face and your unique ethnicity that's caused your features to be that shape, etc., etc. And most of the people here do that all the time as well.
That's interesting.
Well, what you're doing is you're filling your pigeonholes of your brain with more information.
Right.
Why would I sit opposite someone, just happens to be you today, and not benefit from the life lesson that is the architecture of their face?
Existence.
So we make eyes. We make really good eyes. But to make really good eyes, you have to study eyes. So when you study eyes, you can't look at someone without looking at their eyes, right? And the colour in their eye and the amount of veins in their eye and the certain limbus line around the intersection between the white and the iris, etc., etc.
I feel like I'm being studied.
Yeah. Everyone gets studied at some level. Yeah.
It's true. Can we talk about the importance of creating with your hands?
Yeah. Tactility. I actually maybe have an uneducated and ungrounded anxiety, or not anxiety, but concern around the loss of tactility in the world. The fact that a lot of the population now are interfacing with the world through the black mirror, through the hard surface interface of the cell phone or the iPad, through the clicking of the vanilla flavoured IKEA future that we're living in. And why is that a concern? Because we live in a tactile world where the very planet, the organism that we are so abundantly dependent on, is a tactile object that needs to be nurtured and cared for and treated with respect, etc., etc. And if we forget what grass feels like under our feet and what the squish of mud feels like in our hands and what the scent of cut wood smells like, etc., etc., maybe we start to detach. Maybe we start to enter this sort of superior Elysium existence where we no longer are living respectful of the planet that we're on. And I sort of think about that a lot. And therefore, the desire... I've just had 5 interns come and join us from the Beijing Film Academy. Amazingly talented people, more talented than me. But they had never... They're aged from 20 to 29, and they had entirely created through a stylus, a Wacom, and a mouse, right? And so I put some life sculpting classes on for them, where they actually squished clay, and they sculpted from the organic person, and they made these beautiful clay sculptures, and they did miraculous work, and they found it miraculous because they were like, oh, this is what I've been missing. This is what it's all about. Yeah.
I do wonder if there's, and I guess you've kind of mentioned it, but that's why I like dirt in the garden and being back in nature.
Good on you. There's nothing better than actually pushing your fingers into the soil. I've just come back from an art gallery exhibition where I was doing an interview with the artist. So I've cleaned my nails, right? But people comment on the internet when I've done things about our workshop. He always has dirty nails. That's not because I lack hygiene. I'm actually a very hygienic person, but I've got my nails in the dirt so frequently, or in plasticine or in clay, you just can't keep them clean. But there is actually a lovely sense of having used your hands to do something that week. And I'd hate to think a week would pass where I haven't got dirty fingernails because I haven't had my hands in something, organic and physical and squishy.
I think there's good advice there, which is like if you're struggling for a week or you're a bit lost or just whatever, just go stick your hands in some dirt. Or it's like the bare feet kind of analogy where it's like go put your feet on the grass or the dirt and everything's
Squish
fine.
your toes in the sand at the beach edge. We're blessed in New Zealand that we're less than 2 hours from the beach wherever we live, approximately. So trying to get your kids out of the house on Saturday morning and get them going and sliding in the mud and squishing their toes in the sand.
I'm going to swap tacks a little bit. So you have a history of world building, creating these epic worlds. So whether you're a writer or a creative or into film or whatever it is, do you have any tips for what you think has to go into world building to make it authentic and feel real?
Yeah, I do, but this is my perspective and how we therefore operate at Weta Workshop, but it is not a rule because anyone and everyone should have no rules around world building. But the worlds that I love to imagine, be part of, help create or entirely create, I want plausible ecologies. I want our worlds to have an ecology that is so plausible that the fantastical component of the world doesn't have to wink at the audience. Just buy into it, right? I really want to think that people consuming the worlds that we create, even though they may be wildly fantastical, they still have a foundation of plausible ecology to the degree I've described in the past, that the audience may get out of their chair, walk up to the screen, look around the edge of the proscenium arch like this, and truly believe that the world exists beyond the rectangle that the director has chosen to film. If you think about it, there is a cone coming out of the front of the camera, and all you really need to build, therefore all you really need to spend money on, is only what the cone sees. And I was describing it just the other day to some people. A great example of it is early westerns, where they just build the flattage to just hide around the corner. But if you walked around the corner, there's just desert, right? But the audiences of today are extraordinarily sophisticated in their choice of consumption and in their evaluation of what they've watched. And of course, there's the forum to post-analyze. And therefore, it's imperative that you credit your audience with the intelligence that they bring into the cinema or to the television screen or to a location-based experience or to a collectible. It'd be like doing shonky anatomy under a fantastical character. This character we were talking about earlier, the anatomy, although fantastical, is underpinned by an extraordinary understanding of the true anatomy of the human form. And therefore, the piece is plausible and therefore more powerful. So that's something that I really look for in our world buildings.
This is a weird one, but purpose or contribution?
Purpose or contribution? I think with me, the easiest answer to give you is equal balance. I have credible desire to have purpose in the life, philanthropically, at a community level, at a colleague and work level, at a family life level. I call my dad frequently every week, multiple times a week, to check on him. Before my mum passed, I called her every single night that I drove home for 10 minutes just to make sure she knew that she was loved and, etc. But I also am very, very compelled to contribute. I want to be a contributor. I see it like this, that if there's a planet, which is the Earth, and it's got 7.8 billion, or how many people, 8 billion people on the world, of which every one of us is sucking some amount out of the planet, then it's beholden on as many of us that can to contribute back into it. My wife and I are tree planters. We love trees, and we've put in a lot of trees. There are people that work with us that don't have the opportunity to plant trees. So I want to make sure I plant as many trees as I can for each person that works with us. Tanya is a great trapper. She traps every weekend to try and get pests out of the ecosystem of the natural world that we are fortunate to live in. That's a contribution in a very small way, but it's still a contribution. And then, of course, Tanya and I are patrons of the Neonatal Trust, have been for 21 years, and other things. So there's very blunt ways you can contribute as well as very subtle ways.
I think where the question comes from is, I came across it have been thinking about it a lot lately, is in a world where people don't know what their purpose is or they haven't found their passion, I think one of the ways to live a good life can be almost like contribution can be the pathway to finding your purpose. And so I think rather than telling everyone, go find your purpose, blah, blah, blah. Actually, if you sort of find the contributions you want to make.
Give them the ability to contribute.
Yeah. And then maybe through that, they'll actually find their passion. It's almost the giving them a pathway to pursue purpose or passion rather than going, go find it. It's really lovely being parts of fan groups, because there they've gone to contribute to something and found their life purpose and their life partners often. It's very beautiful. And people go, oh, you know, why do you hang out with the fans? Or, you know, do you let the fans into your life? We're fans. They're exactly like us. Of course, we want to associate with people that are exactly like us. And it's so beautiful watching their life stories around a certain fandom and the purpose that it gives them through the contribution that they've made to that fan group. And on that note, we've talked about it a little bit, but you met Tanya when you were 13. Today's your 45th anniversary. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like, or how it's maybe empowered you, or like the gift that it's been to have like that companion walk through life with you?
Yeah. Well, you've probably said it quite well there. 1 + 1 = 3, that cliche, right? We couldn't have done what we've done as individuals. We have complementary skills. Tanya does things that I can't do at all, and I do things that she can't do at all. But if we make sure that we complement those, try never to raise your voices at each other. A put down is still a put down, right? A positive criticism is still a criticism. So you want to try and, be positive without the criticism and find your way through. It's an imperative that we get on well, because we have a family, and once you've got children, you don't have a license to be dickheads. You've got to be complementary to their well-being. And then if you work together in the manner that we do, very intensely, we're seen as almost a single unit in the work environment. We've shared an office together for 34 years, and only last year, because I needed more space to brainstorm in here, has Tanya moved across to the corner of the office. But therefore, it's imperative for the stability and certainty of the people that work with you, that they see that you're not fractious or demanding of each other. So, the obvious one, it just comes down to mutual respect of each other's positions and what you each want out of life. And
wanting the best for each other, always.
Yeah. Are we still the best? Are we still the best of friends and the best colleagues and partners?
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay, the fun stuff. Quick fire questions. What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
Most underrated fruit. Well, I know what I love the most, which is broccoli, and I always feel aggrieved when I hear that people are bashing on broccoli.
How do you like to have it?
Lightly steamed, but I do peel the stem and eat it like a crunchy carrot.
With ranch dressing is my favourite.
Oh, I've never tried that. Okay, I'll do that tonight.
What's your favourite cocktail?
I don't drink cocktails. Never have.
Worst meal that your parents made you eat?
An over-hot curry that nearly killed me. My mother was an extraordinary cook of incredible experimental level, but one day she cooked a hot curry, and as a child, I still remember it today. And you never left food on your plate, so it had to be eaten, and I nearly carked. Yeah.
Heart rate going up.
Yeah.
Most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Fallen in love with the photograph of the girl that I saw when I was 12 years old, I guess. Yeah.
I love that. Biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Been offered a project of the scale of Lord of the Rings when we really didn't yet have the technical and creative capabilities to take it on, but desiring to take it on and achieve to the level we knew we had to achieve to. That's, I think, probably it, yeah.
And one word that describes your life?
Manic.
I can see that.
Yeah. In a good way. Manically fun, wild and wonderful.
Everything life should be. 2 more questions. One, earlier in the podcast, you mentioned success. I was curious, like, what does success mean for you now? Like, what matters for you as you kind of go on your journey?
Constantly improving my own self-capabilities, pushing myself and our team to do ever more complex things. I don't ever want to rest on my laurels, technically, creatively, as a human. In the last year, we've got into robotics in a very big way. It's something I've aspired to do for 35 years. And that is testing us, really testing us. But it's fantastic because you come in every morning desiring to see the ground that we've gained. Right.
Awesome. And then the final question is maybe looking ahead a little bit. What's the dream?
The part of the dream is continue to do exactly what we do right now and have always done and desire to always do, with incremental or large leaps, technically, innovation-wise and creatively. But I do have things that I dream to do professionally that I have not yet achieved and I fully intend to achieve, very big things. And just hope that I don't peg out early so I can still get those done. But I won't share them because in sharing them, you give a piece of them away. And I'm very much of the view that you must always hold things to the confidence of the people that can help enable them, but no one else.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard, for gracing the Bountiful podcast with your journey and exploring joy with me and a little bit of what makes you tick. It's been a captivating journey exploring the depths of creativity and the richness that it brings you and, I guess, our lives. And also, I think, the power of being abundantly you, which is something very special. For our audience, eager to explore more of your work, I'll include the links to your work in the show notes. And if you've found today's episode inspiring, don't forget to follow us and subscribe for more engaging conversations. Our season is brimming with extraordinary people and delightful conversations, and you won't want to miss out. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And cheers to you, Shaun. It's been a lovely chat.
Thank you.